Thank you to everyone who's joined into our webinar. Today's webinar, we're really excited to have presenting with us and speaking. Our guest speaker is Sarah Henry from the University of Maine. Sarah, I've known for many years. She's the director at for Student Accessibility Services at the University of Maine. And the webinar is focusing on oral communication, getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. And we're going to elaborate further on that. Sarah's going to talk about this in a lot of detail. We've also got some exciting news for you guys that we're launching from PresentPal. So you'll have some insight into that too. So let's get started. Just to let everyone know, as I mentioned before, there's closed captioning set up on this webinar. Our aim and objective is to, whenever we do these webinars or any communications we're doing, we provide them to be as accessible as possible. So we've, the marketing team and everyone here has ensured that our presentations that we're doing are also fitting those sort of metrics as best as we can. So for example, the font size, etc. But any suggestions you guys have, please do. We always welcome those. Please do suggest them to us, and we're more than happy to constantly improve on our webinars for future. What we're going to do today is, I've already introduced Sarah. We're going to go straight into Sarah's presentation, where she will talk about why oral communication makes us uncomfortable, but then also exploring strategies and accommodations for building confidence and resilience. There are going to be some polls in between, so just a word of warning just to let you guys know. So there's some interaction involved with you guys, which we always enjoy. And also we welcome your questions. So what we're going to do is, towards the end of the webinar, we will allow for some questions that we're going to take live. My colleague who's supporting me here is Cara Hunt. She'll be taking your questions on the Q&A, the chat box there. So absolutely do type in your questions there. We'll try to get to as many as we can. If there are any that we miss out, please do get in touch with us. We will have our contact details over to you. And as I said, we've got some exciting news to share with you. So you are going to get a look at the new PresentPal app, which is the latest version we've just released. So everyone's going to get a glance at that. And we're also launching a pilot program, something I'll touch on later on. So first thing, let's actually launch our poll. So the question I have on this, our first poll, is what makes oral communications or presentations uncomfortable for a speaker? So on your screens now, my colleague's just going to launch the poll there. So Cara, if you go ahead and launch the poll and press the poll button there, and it will show up on your screen, and then you can select your options. You are able to select multiple options, by the way. So Cara, you will have to just launch it because it's not allowing me to launch the poll. So I think because you're the co-host, you'll have to press the poll on the toolbar.
Yeah, poll is in progress. We've got half of our attendees have voted so far. Very exciting.
Brilliant.
We'll just give it another minute or so.
And I see we've got people still joining in too now. Excellent. Let's share those results so we see what it looks like.
Okay. And now sharing the poll results with everyone. And yeah, really interesting. So we've got 74% have voted. Being judged by the audience is one of the kind of most uncomfortable challenges for getting content coming in second. So really, really interesting to actually kind of see that result there.
And just to make sure, can everyone see that? For some reason, I couldn't see the results on my screen. But that's interesting that the majority mentioned that. I'm going to pass over to Sarah right now. So we'll get moving to your section, Sarah. But what are your thoughts in terms of the results that came in, Sarah?
I think it's interesting. I checked every single one of them when I took the poll. And so, it's affirming to know. I see some names that are familiar and people who I know are outstanding presenters. So I think even people who do a lot of public speaking or oral communication have some of these same experiences, concerns, fears, and things that make us anxious.
Brilliant, excellent. So I'll pass it over to you, Sarah. So if you, I'll be at your instructions in terms of moving on to the next slide. So you just let me know when you want to move on to the next slide. Okay.
Perfect. So just briefly, my name is Sarah Henry, and I've worked in higher education for forever. I am at the University of Maine in Orono, Maine now. And before that, I worked at the University of Maine at Augusta. And before that, I worked at Johnson State College. And before that, I was at the University of Vermont, where I did my graduate work and then did some adjunct teaching there. So I just want to start off by thanking you all for being here. I'm tickled that people have an interest in the content and the topic. And I'm really grateful that people are here on a Wednesday afternoon. Happy St. Patrick's Day to my American friends. So we'll start off with just the notion that communication skills are an essential part of success in college, and broadly communication skills, oral communication, written communication, listening skills, all of them together are important in demonstrating knowledge, in asking questions, clarifying content, forming relationships. There's all kinds of pieces that are standards and curriculum that include oral speaking. So another piece to this is that employers often list communication as something that is important in their employees. And in addition to, so once you're employed, getting employed is dependent on public speaking skills as well. I mean, interviews are all about oral communication, how you present yourself, how you interact with the folks who are interviewing you. And it's estimated, I've read different studies, between 75 and 80% of people experience anxiety, fear, and significant discomfort about oral communication. And there's multiple research studies that have duplicated these findings. So how do we reconcile these things where something that we have to do and something that we really have difficulty doing? Next slide. Great. So who might struggle with oral communication? So if we're looking at students with disabilities or students who have different kinds of chronic conditions, we often think about folks who have social anxiety or generalized anxiety disorder. But other kinds of students with disabilities, including those with speech language kinds of conditions, brain injuries that may affect memory, aphasia, autism, and individuals who have difficulty with social interaction, all have different kinds of difficulties with public speaking, with oral communication, and may require accommodations and assistance with oral communication. Next slide. It can be really challenging to think about possible accommodations. If we're thinking about the impact of who experiences this difficulty, and we're thinking, so for example, maybe it's something that's related to mental health and anxiety. How does that present itself? Talking to the student about what does it look like for you when you get anxious? And some students might describe dizziness or lightheadedness, sweaty palms, or nausea. And those physical symptoms are really difficult for them to manage. Emotional dysregulation in individuals who have difficulty with mental health can really manifest when we're asked to have public presentations or engage in oral speaking. I think that's true for people who have anxiety around public speaking that's not necessarily a disability. But when you do have a disability, it's certainly amplified. So how can we address that? Sometimes simple things, having a glass of water, and then how the student can have sort of planned pauses where they take a sip of water and they practice that as they're rehearsing. Take a sip of water, take a breath, reassure yourself, think about your content, go ahead. That's not a typical, that's something generally that a professor would allow, but it's something that also could be a deliberate accommodation that student might want to use. Or notes. Many faculty will allow notes during a presentation, but there are times when students have to memorize a good deal of content, and students who have brain injuries or other kinds of disabilities that affect them cognitively may need notes as an accommodation. Or staying seated, when I mentioned being lightheaded, individuals just sitting down can be something that's helpful. Sometimes using audiovisual equipment. We had an individual who a number of years ago, and she was actually a communication major and had a number of classes where she had to do public speaking, and it was really challenging. She absolutely wanted to get better. She was very nervous and she rose to the challenge over and over again. But one of the things we found that helped her was being able to use AV equipment or software, having video clips or recording portions of a presentation that she could do and integrate it into a live presentation. That was an accommodation that we approved for that student. And I think one of the crucial things when trying to decide on accommodations and implement accommodations is talking to the student and talking to the faculty. Really sort of understanding what is the intersection of this student's disability with what the expectations for the class are, and how can we use accommodations to help this student be able to demonstrate the knowledge that they have and the skill that they have. I've talked to a number of colleagues, and I know that another accommodation that we have used here, and I've had colleagues who've used, is to have a student as an accommodation be able to present to a smaller group, or meet with a professor and present to the professor instead of the whole class. And looking at that accommodation, what is the requirement, the nature of doing this live presentation for the whole class? And if there's feedback that the class is giving or questions that the class is giving, is it reasonable to change that setting? Could just answering questions from a smaller number of groups or questions from a TA or a faculty member be a reasonable substitution for that larger class interaction? And as all of you who are in disability services know, accommodations, I believe, are sometimes as much of an art as they are a science. That I had somebody ask me in the past couple of weeks, well, do you have a chart that says all the possible disabilities and then a grid that lays out what all the accommodations that everybody would need based on what their disability is? And I said to this individual who's thinking about going into this field in the longer term of their career, I said, we don't have a chart. And actually, we can't have a chart because you really need to look at each person as an individual. And you need to have an interactive process where you are considering that person's documentation, that person's presentation, and looking at how that intersects with the essential standards of their curriculum and their program. Next slide. So the thing about accommodations is that they can be incredibly helpful and a really useful tool, but accommodations don't always mitigate the anxiety. They don't always remove that emotional dysregulation. I'm not saying they never do. They can absolutely help. They can absolutely be a terrific tool. But sometimes the student could use some coaching, some mentoring, some strategies, some links to tools that will help them manage that discomfort. And that is sort of the nature, I believe, of building resilience. When we think about resilience, by definition, resilience is bouncing back from a difficult emotional, physical, threatening situation and being able to come back to a normal state, quote unquote normal. I don't love that word, but it's in a number of definitions of the word resilience. And so by definition, you have to have discomfort. You have to go through a struggle to become resilient. And it's frustrating to students. It's frustrating to us all to a certain extent to know that to be resilient, we have to actually be resilient. We have to go through those hard times to be able to deal with future hard times. So how do we do that? How do we build public speaking resilience? Next slide. So here's some strategies, and this is not an exhaustive list, and I'm really curious if other people have strategies. I would love to hear or accommodations or ideas. I am really open and interested in what other folks do. So some strategies to helping students with building public speaking or oral communication resilience might include decatastrophizing brain freezes. So when I say that, when a student, especially if they have a panic disorder and they have this experience of feeling that when I do this, I feel nauseous, I might vomit, I have vomited, I might pass out. My stomach, I sweat. I feel like I need to change my shirt in the middle of this because I can just feel my body dripping because I'm so panicky. And it feels like it's catastrophic. And it can feel like that to the student, but helping them to see, you might feel like your heart's racing and this is going to kill you, but you're not going to, most generally speaking, you're not going to die from feeling this. And part of the process of becoming resilient and learning how to engage in public speaking, engage in oral communication, and manage those feelings is to remember that this is not a catastrophe. Part of what happens to us in terms of anxiety is that those very, very old fight or flight brain cells that we're used to, when we were evolving humans and panicked because there was a life-threatening situation and needed those endorphins and that brain chemistry that helped us get out of life-threatening situations, sticks around, and as evolved humans, we still have that fight or flight response, but we don't need to flee from the anxiety that we might experience when we public speak or have oral communication. We can learn to decatastrophize that. We can learn to build our skills around managing our emotions. Some other strategies, don't be afraid of silence. And I tell myself this frequently, that when you have that moment, when you can't remember the next thing you were supposed to say, or you can't remember what's going to be on the next slide, or it's okay to have a second in there where you regroup, and that's sort of another thing with the water. If you have a little glass of water next to you, being able to stop and take a drink of water can be sort of a cover for having that moment of silence. Eye contact can be challenging for a number of folks, those with social anxiety, those with autism. I have a number of students with autism who have a difficult time making eye contact. And yet I know that in public speaking classes, sometimes in the evaluation that students give one another and that their faculty give them, they get evaluated on their ability to connect with an audience. And often the faculty will see eye contact, or their peers will see eye contact as an important method of having that contact with the audience. So I have a colleague, Jane Thurfield Brown, who is an expert in autism and is a fantastic trainer and presenter. And I went to one of her trainings years ago. She had a great strategy that if you look at a person and you look at them sort of between their eyes, just about where their eyebrows are, and if you sort of focus on that spot, the receiver feels that you're looking at their eyes because you're looking at their face, you're looking near their eyes. But the student with autism or the student with social anxiety doesn't have to maintain exact eye contact to try and build their ability to get to that place or to have some kind of contact with the audience. So I thought that was a neat tip that Jane had given. Practice, but don't memorize. And I think this is really interesting because I read some studies. Oh, and if you do want my list of resources, I've got an APA list of all of the articles and websites and blogs and scholarly articles that I researched for this. And I'm happy to share that. Amir's got my contact information in the last slide, and I am happy to have anybody email me, and I'll share that, and I'll share my PowerPoint as well. Anyhow, so there was some mixed evidence on this, that for some individuals, practice did not make perfect. Practice was useful, but it didn't replicate that experience of being in a room with people you feel are going to judge you in a way that enabled them to then do that successfully. So I think this notion of not memorizing is really important, and I use it myself. I will tell you, and this is a tool that I use, is, be candid in ways that are helpful to the student, not making it about me, but being able to share that I have some of these challenges too. And these are some things that I've done. So when I sent Amir my first batch of slides for this, he was very kind, and Kara was very kind in their feedback, but I asked them, I said, please give me the feedback. And I knew the first thing they were going to say, and I was ready for it. Too many words. Well, the first time I do my slides, and this is sort of something I'm notorious for myself with, is I give myself sort of a pseudo script in that first batch of slides, and I have to work to pare it down and pare it down and pare it down. And you can see, even from this slide, I've got quite a list on there, but I felt that it would be very useful for you to see this in print as I was talking. So the more that the speaker is able to sort of trust, you've researched this content, you know this material, you are able to use these skills that you've built and do this presentation and not have to rely on memorization or a script. Talked a little bit about written notes or index cards or a digital practice app or a tool. I am using PresentPal right now, and I will tell you, I love the little timer in it. It's super helpful for me. I saw this one really interesting study that talked about focusing on delivery and focusing on arm movements and hand gestures, and that students who did this, it helped them with their oral communication, and it also could help with anxiety. And if you link that to some mindfulness activities we're going to talk about after this, it can be a great tool. And then many of you might have heard of the notion of having a growth mindset. A growth mindset is, in many contexts, a really important and helpful tool. And it really involves choosing to believe that you can improve, that skills, intelligence are not fixed. We can learn, we can grow, we have the capacity to adapt and flex and become better at that which is difficult for us. Next slide. So the tool I want to end on and focus on is mindfulness, because I really do think that mindfulness can be a really powerful tool for so many things. And I will tell you, I consider myself a novice practitioner of mindfulness. And I'm deliberately not using the word meditation because people often will have a reaction to that. And, oh, I don't meditate. Oh, I can't meditate. I get too distracted. And some of these practices are meditation practices, but they're also mindfulness practices. And mindfulness is the practice of coming back to now over and over again. And the breath is one of the tools that we can use to develop mindfulness. So I've done a variety of seminars and workshops, teaching, apps, to try and learn mindfulness. And one of the wonderful analogies that I read about was the notion of a raging river, that when we are having an anxiety attack, having a panic attack, when we are really upset, it's sort of like being in a river that is full of rapids, and the rapids are just pushing us around. We do not have control over what's happening. The rapids have control over what's happening. We are being shoved to the side, pushed under, bumping into logs, and floating down the river. But what mindfulness can do is help us get out of the river and sit on the bank. And you may still have, those rapids are still there. We have not removed the fact that we have emotions, that we have anxiety, that there is this, maybe your heart is still pounding, but we can manage it differently. We can regulate our emotions by practicing. And the breath is a wonderful tool to do this. I want to give a shout out to the University of Florida Resilience Project, Student Resilience Project. And Kara is going to put a link in the chat for me. I belonged to the Resilience Consortium. I need to renew my membership, but which is a nationwide organization really focused on resilience in college students. And the University of Florida has a terrific website that has, some of it is, they have a wonderful program that you can pay for, but there's also some free resources. And one of them is Breathe for Relaxation. And they give some information about how to do that, how to take deep breaths, how to ground yourself. So that is a resource that may be helpful to you or to your students. Mindfulness can help us connect those thoughts and feelings. We're not trying to block them out. The rapids are still there, the emotions are still there, but we can figure out how to feel them. And another tool for mindfulness is if you have an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, there are breathing apps that are on there, and there are heart rate monitors on there. And you can actually sort of time your breath. You can figure out how many breaths, how many seconds in, how many seconds out it works for you. There's not a perfect way to breathe, but belly breathing is a really important piece of this, getting yourself that oxygen and coming back into the moment to connect with your thoughts and feelings, feeling that feeling and then letting it go, having that thought and then letting it go, and coming back to now, coming back to that classroom, coming back to that presentation. And that's the notion of the hand gestures. If you do the breathing and you relax your hands, it can be a physical cue to your body, mind, and soul to help you ground yourself, reconnect, and then be resilient and continue with that presentation. There's some lovely loving kindness practices that are part of meditation. Sometimes people will talk about mantras, or they'll talk about messages that you could do. And you can add a little mindfulness or a loving kindness practice, such as, may I be calm, may I be healthy, may I be at peace as I'm doing this, to your note card, to remind yourself or cue yourself to help yourself be grounded and learn public speaking resilience. And this motion, so it's all part and parcel of this notion of practicing, doing one piece at a time, increasing our attention, increasing our emotional resilience. And thank you very much. I'm really grateful to have the chance to talk to you today, and I'm going to pass this back to Amir.
Sarah, that was brilliant. I've presented with you before, Sarah, so I know the authenticity that you have with regards to your presentations, and actually the sort of the content that you've revealed in the past too. I think we've spoken at ATIA before, so I knew the content would be valuable to the audience here, but I've learned some new things for myself, particularly with regards to those breathing exercises that you're talking about. I wanted to speak to you a little bit about, in the current climate we're in, as there's more a dependency on, for students and all of us, to do presentations or our communications via the virtual environment like we are doing now. how transferable are some of those strategies to this environment? So, for example, I always talk about this part in some of my talks before, where as someone who's comfortable speaking in a public environment, face-to-face environment, I now no longer get visual cues anymore or reassurances that, okay, my content's getting through. So it draws on that point that you mentioned earlier, which I highlighted, which was silence. How do you adjust with silence? It's that visual blackout, basically. And what have you found in terms of how transferable those strategies are to that?
I think this is a great point, that it's really, really different to present to a room of people there. And that I come back to the poll and that people's fear about being judged. But then the other side of that is that you're getting smiles, you're getting nods, you're getting those nonverbal responses from people that are really motivating. And it can be really difficult to present to a screen full of names where you don't know, are they receiving this information? Is this working? Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? I think you're absolutely right. And I think that, some of this is going to stick around. I think that as much as I'd love to think Zoom isn't here to stay, I think it is here to stay. That, and that works for some people. Actually, for some people, presenting through Zoom or presenting virtually wouldn't have typically been something that I would have used as an accommodation, but I can potentially see somebody asking for that as a modification, or classes where that's built into the platform or the learning management for it.
Yeah, and I'm just mindful of the time, so we will take questions, folks. Don't please do type in your questions on the chat box. We will take questions at the end. Time permitting, we'll try to go through all of them. There is a very interesting comment someone wrote down on the chat box about a strategy they've used. So I thought I'd share with you real quick, Sarah. So this person, they said that with their students, they use color-coded note cards that help them know when each section of their presentation is finished. It helps them remain on task and know where they are in the overall presentation. That I thought was brilliant, actually. So it ties in fairly well to what we're going to look at right now with regards to PresentPal, and another strategy option or another accommodation option, and how we could possibly help. So Sarah, I thought that was pretty good, actually, what this person had just shared about a strategy. So pretty good strategy there.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we were going to move on. And first thing we're going to do is look at another poll. And on this poll, my colleague's just going to launch it now. So, Cara, if you just give me a thumbs up that it's been launched, because I can't see the poll itself for some reason.
No worries, that's launched. Yeah.
Brilliant. So this one is, in which of these environments would you say that improved communication or presentation skills help the most? Again, you can select multiple options here. And we'll run it for just a couple of seconds, and then Cara, when you go ahead, share it, if you just talk about the results, because you can see them and I can't.
No worries.
I just love this slide, Cara, so thank you for adding it in. And actually, it's our colleague, Ben Scott, who does a lot of the videos and everything on our slides. So Ben, good work on this slide.
Okay, I will end the poll now and share the results. So really interesting. Top result was actually workplace presentations in person and remote. So that was the environment where people feel that their most improved communication and presentation skills help the most. So that is, I think, a really valid point. Completely agree with that. Second point is a lecturer, as a lecturer in K-12 or college, that was 49%. And then third, we've got as a student presenting to peers or teachers as well. I've just realized this isn't in order, so sorry about that. But yeah, we've got a quite interesting kind of mixed bag of results there. Interviews as well, standing out as a kind of top reason, and one of the environments that helps when you have kind of great communication skills. So thank you so much for all the voting there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, folks. And not surprised that there is a broad mix. You know, there's a lot of facets in our lives where oral communication does become essential, or is something that we are dependent upon. So this kind of led us to developing PresentPal, and actually your new version. So I'm just going to show you guys that right now on your screens. PresentPal, for those who don't know, is an app that you install on your smartphones or your tablets, and it works on all the platforms, so Android and iOS. And what it allows the users to do is really improve their communication skills, be it in a presentation environment or any other environments. I'll touch on those environments later on too. And what you can see on here is the tools designed to allow you to create these virtual flashcards that do a lot more than just flashcards, and use them in a way that allows you not only just to organize your thoughts that you're speaking on, but also make them very accessible to you. We have spent a lot of time on this new version to enhance the accessibility features. So that's something that we're really excited about. We've added numerous other features in there. There's also the aspect in here where you can rehearse your presentation. So that's the improvement side, and I'll talk about that later on too. But really excited about this. So this is something that we've just launched, and we wanted to introduce you guys to this. And at the towards my last slides, I will talk about how you can actually get access to this at your institution for free. So there's something that we're looking to test out with some institutions also. So what the app does is you would create these virtual flashcards, as I mentioned before, but on my deck of cards or my flashcards, I will first of all title my deck with whatever the topic is or where the slides are. So let's say the solar system. And my first flashcard could be about general information, as you can see here. Now, each one of those bullet points that I'm going to add onto that flashcard are not scripts. So what I'm trying to do here is write down keywords that allows me to stay on track, remember what I'm talking about. So for example, in that general information, I may want to talk about the size of the solar system, how many planets there are, how old it is, and just those things. So maybe 3 bullet points, that's what I want to cover, but it allows me to stay on track. I can clearly see what's I'm talking about. So if I get distracted, I can look down on my bullet point and be reminded what I'm talking about, but I can also anticipate what's coming up next. So it's very easy to follow the stream. The reason we don't say try to write down your full script, and I'm going back to Sarah's slides earlier, where trying to memorize or using a script like that, not useful because it'll impact your delivery. So it's always better to practice around those keywords and then practice on your delivery. The other thing you're able to do is we've added these things called safety nets. These are additional pieces of information on the bullet points. They could be images like you see here. So they could be images that you've taken on your phone. For example, some students may want to take a picture of a diagram or an equation on a whiteboard and put that down on the safety net. In this example here, this is a way that I personally use it. If I'm delivering on content that has a lot of data involved, and I may or may not forget that data, right? So I'm going through my presentation, I'm using my bullet points, and in case I forget a key stat or key figure, I've got in my safety net as an additional text. I can access it if I need it. So really useful for users who need that additional safety net. Images work great because some of you may be able to describe images better than words. So you may want to use images in that fashion too. So you've got those two things there. You've got your bullet points and your safety nets. Now, let's say you've completed your flashcard in your decks and you've got all the flashcards there. Then what you want to do, use the app to rehearse this. And this is a brilliant feature on the app. What the app allows you to do is you turn on rehearsal mode in the app, and it allows you to go through your flashcards and it records your audio while you're doing so. The benefit of that being is now I can listen back to myself and I can actually even grade myself on each flashcard. So if I like flashcard 2, I give myself a thumbs up. Flashcard 4, I could improve it. I give myself a thumbs down on that. And then I come back to it and review it again and slowly improve my delivery, but more importantly, my confidence. So that's the scaffolding part. Now, by the way, because of the time aspect here, you're getting a brief glimpse at this app. Obviously, what I would recommend is definitely do get in touch with me. Whenever we do speak, I'll probably actually try to do a full detailed demonstration of the app at an appropriate time for you or your colleagues. So that's easily arrangeable. My colleague will put up a link that will allow you to schedule something in with myself. So the other thing we've done on the app, by the way, is we've taken feedback from a lot of our users and our students and said, okay, what else would you like to do? This is something we're always passionate about at PresentPal. So one of the things that a lot of people wanted to do is said, it'd be brilliant if I could actually control my slides on the app also. So what the development team, the wizards there, have done is they've now integrated PresentPal with PowerPoint. So what this does is, say I'm in a presentation environment, and now I'm on slide number 2 or flashcard number 2, but instead of pressing the keyboard or the clicker to change the slide, I can just press flashcard 2 on my app, and it'll automatically change the slide on the PowerPoint. So that's absolutely very, very useful for a lot of students or users who are presenting using PowerPoint. And just in case people are wondering, Google Slides, that's our next on our list. So we'll be working on getting that done too. So absolutely brilliant. Just to debunk a myth, you do not need PowerPoint to use PresentPal. You can absolutely use PresentPal without PowerPoint. This is just an additional feature for those who are using PowerPoint. Okay, so that's a brief glimpse into the app. And how we've set it up is really designed so the user interface, the team's designed it deliberately. So from starting the download to actually presenting, it's very easy and simplistic to do. We wanted to create it to make it so intuitive that users within a K-12 environment, a higher education environment, or a workplace environment can all use this very easily. So it's not an overwhelming piece of equipment. So would be fascinating to see your feedback and your input once you're started using it yourselves too. I'll briefly glance on this just to let everyone know how you can use PresentPal. So the one you've clearly heard me speak about is presentations, face-to-face and remote presentations. Yes, that's where the biggest benefit is. A lot of the users are also finding benefits of PresentPal in these other environments too. We've got user guides on how to use them for each environment. So just to give you a brief example, there's exam prep if someone's studying for an exam. A simplistic use of this would be, I would write my questions in the front on a bullet point and my answers on the safety net. And then when I turn on rehearsal mode, I can practice my exam questions and check the safety nets if I got them right. Okay, so when we do a live demo with you, I'll go through these in more detail, but just to let you know, there are multiple uses of PresentPal, not just presentations. Because of time, I'm actually going to skip this. This is actually student testimonial. We have a student who's given a really good testimonial about how their experience was. We will share these with you. There's a recording available of this on our website too, so we will share this with you. But I'm going to move on forward. So apologies for not being able to go through that. In terms of our users that we have currently for PresentPal, we've got over 5,000 students currently using PresentPal at over 100 universities and colleges. But what we really wanted to do is expand this out further into the US higher education institutions for fall 2021. And the best way we felt to do this was with a pilot program. We're going to let you test drive this. And by that, I mean, we will let you have the app for a full semester period, and we will provide you with at least 25 licenses for your students and also plus additional staff licenses. We will train you, we'll get you all set up. The idea being is you get to do your own due diligence on this. You'll do your own surveys, we'll support you with that. We've got some sample survey forms, but at least you gain the data that you need to obtain to say, does this work for my students, or does it work for all my students or a certain group of students? But at least you're able to do the data. We just wanted to create a facility that removed all barriers for you to test it out. So we are only able to do 50 pilots for this semester, and that's simply due to resource. My colleagues now just putting up a link on the chat box, which will take you to a form that says, yep, I'm interested in the pilot form, or I'm interested in the pilot program. We will then get you set up. If you're not ready for the pilot and you just want to see a demonstration, I would still recommend filling out the form, and we can set up a live demonstration for you and your colleagues first before going on to the pilot. But I'd recommend getting onto that because of the restricted numbers we are doing on these, so we can set you up. But it's a great way for you guys to test this out. So, and also we can give you your own free demo license for yourselves too. Perfect. We're just launching our final poll that Cara is just going to launch right there. And this will allow us to understand what you guys are interested in, or how we can help you and support you more further on. So Cara, if you just let me know that's been launched. And
Launched, yep.
Brilliant, thank you. And go ahead and make your selections on there. And you can, again, select multiples in here. And Cara, once that you've published the results, if you give me a heads up and I'll move on.
No worries, just waiting on the results trickling in. Really enjoyed the presentation today. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sarah. That's great. Okay, just at 40% voted. Will I just kind of wrap up, Amir?
Perfect. So while Cara's showing that, I thought I'd put on the final piece here our contact details. Sarah, thank you very much, by the way. I have exceeded the time, so apologies for that, but I'm happy to take some questions. So for those that are okay to stick around, we will take some questions. So if we do have any questions, Cara, if you want to go through them, more than happy to do that. But Sarah, thank you very much again for the presentation.
You are most welcome. Thanks for the invitation, and thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and enjoyed it again presenting with you. So our email details are there. So as Sarah said, feel free to get in touch if you need some more, want to get in touch with her too. So to speak about some of the content that she spoke about. And also thank you, Cara, for supporting us today. So Cara, are there any questions that we could probably take one question maybe, or one or two questions maybe?
Yeah, so we did have a question coming from Sharnessa. Can you use the app with foreign languages? Yeah,
brilliant question. So you noticed in one of the environments that I mentioned of where you can use the app for, one of our colleagues is actually using the app to improve their confidence in learning Portuguese. So it's a brilliant tool to improve your confidence if you're learning a new language, or also for a lot of first-generation students where English may not be their native language. So really good tool. And the rehearsal mode, again, becomes very key in this, because what it allows you to do is practice your delivery, your pronunciation, and rehearse that. If you're working with a coach, they can help you with that too. So really, really useful. We've got some guides on how to use it for that when we do set you up, we'll show you and talk you through those guides too.
Great. And we just have one other question popped in just now from Robin. In a quick version, what does an institutional deployment / use look like? So I think that's with regard to the pilot program.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do with the pilot program or the institutional deployment, we will set you up with what we call our portal. That portal is an admin portal. It allows you to distribute the licenses out to any students you want to distribute out to, and you can set the expiry periods. So you can then have full visibility to see who you've invited and who's actually installed the license. And you'll have that visibility plus some maybe other data too. But what it allows you to do then is if a student's not using it, you can reassign that license to someone else. So the pilot allows you obviously now to experiment with the portal, but also we made the distribution model so easy, or the portal so easy, so that it's not time consuming for you to distribute out licenses to students. Brilliant. Okay, and apologies for going over, folks, but I hope that was useful for everyone. This webinar is recorded, so we do have a recording version of this. So we will be in touch with you guys and provide you access to that recording and other materials that you may need. But as always, get in touch with us. Thank you for valuable time. And Sarah, Kara, thank you very much to both of you, by the way.